Part 2 of the March of Machines. Spoilers, what it do?
Up on Eternal Durdles.
Be strong.
Hello and welcome to Eternal Durdles. I'm your host, Zach Clark, and with me as always, Phil Blackman. Phil, how's it going, man?
Dude, what's up, dude? I'm ready to talk about Omen Hawker more.
Yeah, man, let's talk about, we got a lot of cards to talk about. We already had one episode, which you can find around here somewhere, for the March of the Machine spoilers. We like to do one early, and then we do one after the set is fully dropped, so that we get everything. And then I will probably also combine those into one episode that you can just watch all the way through as well. Excuse the wardrobe changes that will happen during that episode. Wow. But yeah, March of the Machine spoilers, we got a lot to talk about. Before we talk about the March of the Machine spoilers, I just wanted to let everybody know that the prize winners, you guys are getting all your stuff from the last time we did comments. So that's going out. We still have some cards to go out. So I don't know. What do you think, Phil? What should be the thing to guess in this one? What card sees the most play after the week of release? I have my guess.
What's the first card to show up in a premiere event top 8?
All right, yeah. So the winner will be the first person that posts the first card that shows up in a Legacy top 8 in a premiere event.
Main deck, of course.
So comment that below. We'll get those out to you. And I've got 4, so I've got 4 left, and I really just want to get rid of these guys. So comment below. I'm probably gonna just give out some extra ones because I just want to be done with this. I just want to move on to a new thing to do giveaways with. So comment below what you think that is. I know my personal guess is on this, but do you have a guess, Phil?
Omen Hawker.
Oh, you think it's Omen Hawker? Omen Hawker over here.
I think it's Omen Hawker, bro.
Yeah, well, let's talk about. You know what, Phil? Let's talk about Omen Hawker then. Omen Hawker is a 1-mana Cephalid Advisor. It's a 1/1, and it says tap, add a colorless and a blue. Spend this mana only to activate abilities. What do you think? What's going on in that mind of yours, Phil?
So this is it's Magus of the Thran Turbine, and I think we talked about it before. But the reason that the one clause that doesn't have on it is Thran Turbine only lets you puts the mana in your upkeep. Mm-hmm. So if you don't use the mana on some ability in your upkeep, it'll empty from your pool before you hit your draw step. Yeah. So there's an extra restriction of the timing, and it's 2 colorless mana, not a colorless and a blue. So I don't know where the blue color will matter just yet, but this one not having, like, you can be able to do this at any time, including during your opponent's turn or your main phase or whatever, opens up the possibilities of like where just playing Soul Ring matters. Like, yeah. Like, just look at it this way. Remove spend the mana only to cast activated abilities. I get that's a huge drawback, not being able to cast spells with this, but without that line of text, this is just Magus of the Soul Ring. And I refuse to believe in the spoiler in the times of spoilers before we've really experimented that Magus of the Tangential Soul Ring isn't the most playable card in the set.
Yeah,
it's cheap. It does a lot of things that work with a bunch of cards that already exist in the format. Whether it's
where would we see this? That's what people want to know. Where would we see this card at?
Literally, like, I think the premier cards in the format right now are Ancient Tomb and Urza Saga. It works really cleanly with Urza Saga. It's just a cheap way to get that online. Plus, any of the stuff that you would get off of your Urza Saga, it also will work with all of those abilities. This helps you equip equipment. This I think that the bar for this card, like the floor for this card, is so low because it's blue and it's a 1-mana creature. I see a lot of potential upside for this thing, and I want to try it out in if you were to put this in like that 8-cast sort of build. I'm not sure exactly where the space would be, but it works with your Urza Saga. It also lets you activate your Sai a lot more aggressively because it just pays for size 1 in a blue activated ability, then sacked artifacts. So imagine if you know, it's like, I don't know, is there a world where you can get in sort of like this cheap disruptive artifact build with like this and What's the Vidalkin that essentially when you have Metalcraft ports a thing?
I don't know off the top of my head, but we'll pop it over here.
I'm gonna look it up.
There he is.
So there's another card. Yeah, so it's another. I think it's a Vidalkin, but it effectively when you have Metalcraft, it says tap target artifact, creature, or land. So I think it's artifact, creature, or land. I'll look it up. But that like having 8 1-drops that work with like that sort of shell of being like maybe this disruptive artifact based deck as opposed to like the artifact card draw like volume based deck. I don't know. I think that maybe there's some space here. I think.
Well, I can tell you right now, if I were
yeah.
to include this in my deck, the spot that I would put it in, Phil, would just be remove the chalices, because obviously it doesn't work well with the chalices. So that would be that would be my at first blush. That'd be my guess.
The other thing is that like if you were to play this in your Painter deck, this does just set up turn 2 Painter, right? You can go turn 1 Ancient Tomb Painter,
Ooh,
turn 2.
Okay.
Oh no, you would need to play this first because it's a tap ability. So you go turn 1 Omen Hawker off of your land, so that you have 1 mana. Painter Servant 2 plus you're 1 mana short, so you need a pedal.
No, what you need is an Ancient Tomb.
Well, if you go, let's say you go.
Oh, you need an Ancient Tomb and a pedal. Yeah. You're right.
You would need then 5 mana. This generates
still
2
like
mana,
there's so many times where Delver Secrets decks are wastelanding away your land so that you're not able to activate. This gets around wasteland. If you're a blue Painter deck, this is a possible include. I kind of like where you're going with this.
I just think that like the optionality of being able to also use this as a way to like, turbo your currency converters or turbo your retrofitter foundries is like those types of, I get that like it's cheap and incidental stuff and it's not necessarily as impactful as like, for how fast the format is right now. But yeah. it does a lot of subtle work that I don't think anybody's really tapped into yet. But this ability just is a 1 mana add 2 mana to your mana pool without like timing restriction is just pretty nutty to me.
Yeah.
Well, whether or not it's going to show up depends on what it can turn on, but I'm pretty high on it.
Yeah. Well,
it's my pick for most playable card in the set.
Your pick is Omen Hawker. My pick for most playable card in this format, and I think I'm going to beat you. In fact, post in the comments if you think I'll beat Phil on this one, or Phil will beat me. Is Kenra Spellspear? Kenra Spellspear is that warrior jackal that we were trying to figure out about. Is a 2 mana that's 1 to red for a 2/2 with trample and prowess. I think that alone, the trample on this is enough that like I wouldn't say like this is an auto include in Delver, but like it makes it playable by itself. But if you flip it by paying 3 and a blue Phyrexian mana, it becomes a ridiculous Gitaxian Spellstalker, and it's got trample, ward 2, and double prowess. So every time you're bolting, this is getting +2/+2. You're brainstorming +2/+2. Your opponent can't even bolt it effectively because it's got ward 2 to begin with, and any spell you cast stops it from being bolted. Like immediately, just like gives you the puts it out of bolt range. I think that this is one of those cards that like is sneakily like probably one of the best 2-drops that Delver will have access to going forward, in my opinion.
I just think a 3 mana gate is so steep.
It is steep.
That's where I'm like 3 mana is more expensive than every other spell on their deck, which is why like I But
I mean, I could do a this is not as good as this for this, and if we lose Murktide in the future, anytime in the future, I see this as being the immediate replacement for this card.
I think that the tough part of this thing, if Ward interacted similar to Hexproof, right? Because Ward says when it's a trigger when it's targeted. So if somebody targets this, you can't like transform it to then get the Ward trigger.
This is true.
Whereas like if it had like Hexproof or Shroud, if you flipped it, it would fizzle the spell targeting it.
Yeah.
So you can't defensively use the transform ability unless you're looking to like increase its power by 1, and then if you have an additional spell on top of that to like get it to like 5 toughness or something. Whereas like if you were to cast a spell and get it to 3 toughness, that's not going to clear a bolt. But if you can transform it and cast something, then it gets it out of bolt range, something like that. But I think if there was the 3 mana counter your removal spell, and we can get into sort of that jockeying position, I'd be higher on this card. Don't get me wrong, I think the card is good, but I think that given the volume of tools that Delver has access to right now in the threat slots,
there is a lot. There's a lot for it to use. I think the other thing to mention about this card is that you don't have to play blue. You know, like this could be a card that that Burn uses. This could be a card that Nate wants to use in his Mardu deck, and he's like, cast Thoughtseize. You know, like flip this thing over, cast Thoughtseize, bolt this thing, Swords to Plowshares that, and swing in for like 10. You know, like I see this as a card that, like, it looks blue and red, but it really is just red, and it says pay 3 mana and 2 life, because no one's paying 4 mana for this.
You know what I think this is though, like, and why I think it's a trap. I think this card is just a really fancy way to print Kiln Fiend. And that's why I'm like,
I mean, the trample, dude. The trample is the huge thing for me. Like, this is the card. They made
it look like a flashy Kiln Fiend.
This is a card to me that, like, I would have probably played over Tarmogoyf. I think it's better than Tarmogoyf. I'm just gonna say that right now. I would have played this card over Tarmogoyf because Tarmogoyf, when I was playing Rug, Tarmogoyf and Nimble Mongoose were great until you went up against a deck like Elves, right? Because trample matters here, and I think that's the big part here. Is that that trample ability is so good, and trample as a semi-evasion kind of situation makes this card it just pops it up a ton in my book.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I if this card shows up, if people are testing it out, and I think it's interesting to look at it as not necessarily a blue card. You know, like nothing on the card actually requires blue in any meaningful way. I mean, paying 2 life is fine. I really do think that, like, Delver is going to try this. They're going to recognize that it's too expensive because the mana gate is way too steep. And then they're just going to move on to, like, the stuff that doesn't require them to invest mana, because the whole function of that deck is that it gets to beat you on the fact that it's way more efficient, and throwing in a 3 mana activated ability is just antithetical to, like, the inherent structure of that deck, which is why I don't think it fits. But if you're playing, you know, a more incidental, like, mid-rangey game, and you're going to have access to be able to transform this, because you can transform it at instant speed. So if you are holding up interaction and they don't do anything, and then you transform, end step, untap, and then, you know, start flurrying, like, that seems fine. But you have to get into a space where that matters first, right?
Yo, I just figured out something. You know what's a great combo with this card?
No, never mind. You can't even transform it at instant speed. It literally says activate only as a sorcery. Dude, okay. I'm fucking off this card now. I'm off of it.
No. Well, that is less good. But you can play this with Omen Hawker.
Yeah, bro. Activated sorcery speed? I'm out.
I think the activated sorcery speed is rough. I didn't realize that. I still think that this might see play, but I don't know. Might have to take it all back now.
I have to look at every single. So is every one of these transform abilities? They are. Every one of these transform abilities is activated as a sorcery. That's like something that I just overlooked when looking at the spoilers. I was like,
let's talk about Captive Weird, I guess. We're off it. Turn the show off. It's over. The whole thing is done.
we're definitely off Captive Weird. There's too many one mana. So Captive Weird is it's a 1 mana 1/3 defender with 3 and a Phyrexian red to transform it, but you can only do it as a sorcery. And then on the backside, it says whenever it transforms, or whenever you exile the top card of your library until the end of turn, you can play that card. So it transforms and theoretically draws a card and flips into a 3/3 on the ground. It's unplayable.
Yeah, I think something that should be mentioned about this though, Phil, on the transform end, even as a sorcery for like Spear, which could be playable, is it will have haste. It will like be able to attack.
Yeah, totally. But like,
so there's that. Like, we know Delver can attack the turn it flips over. Obviously, I just want to mention
that you're investing this kind of mana to not significantly impact the board with a permanent that your opponent can't beat, or effectively ending the game.
Yeah, we can get rid of Captive Weird.
Like, it's just one of the, like, it always feels bad when we do spoilers, because I know I said this on the last video too, when we were covering the first part of the spoilers. Like, spoiler season now, like, the bar, because of the power creep from like War of the Sparkfire design into the Modern Horizon sets, the bar now is so steep by comparison that like stuff that like activated abilities like this just inherently are locked out. Like, you will just never get, the format's just way too efficient. Like, we were literally having the conversation before we hopped on this call. We were like, is Ancient Tomb actually just the de facto best card in the format now, more so than Brainstorm? Like, because of all of the cheap three drop tools with busted abilities that Ancient Tomb has gotten over the past X number of years. It's like, well, if that's the trajectory of where the format is going, you can't be like, if the format is, if the top decks in the format, the tier ones of the format are just going to skip over the first 2 turns of development, when are you going to have time to spend 5 mana to get your 3/3 double prowess?
It's a valid point. All right, next up, let's talk about Doomscar Warrior. Doomscar Warrior is a 4 mana that's 2 and 2 green, 4/3 with backup 1 and trample, and it says whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player or a battle, look at that many cards from the top of your library. You may reveal a creature or land card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom in a random order. So I mentioned this card. This is I think just playable if we're looking at those green initiative decks. I think that the green initiative decks, being able to give another creature this ability with backup, because it's going to get all that, like that draw a card thing and the trample onto one of your other creatures that's already in play, which gives this sort of a pseudo haste kind of situation and a +1 counter. I think in those like ultra fair initiative decks that are green and are including the green adventurer guy, I think this might be able to see play in a deck like that.
Hey, I'm going to sell you on this card.
Okay.
Do you like Winota? Do you want Winota at home?
Yeah, dude, this is Winota at home. Yeah.
Winota is not only like, it's 4 mana for a 4/4 instead of a 4/3, so it's not going to die to Bolt, because the backup ability is a trigger, so it can die to Bolt on this with the trigger on the stack.
But if they do Winota, the other thing gets the thing.
Winota ends the game on the spot, because it not only lets you look at the top six, yeah. Just comment. Look at that. Okay, so it deals equal to its power, so it's like likely going to look at less than the top 6, and it puts into your hand, doesn't cheat it into play. This is where the power creep went, man.
Yeah,
power creep went to Winota.
All right, let's talk about Grafted Butcher. Grafted Butcher is a Phyrexian Samurai 2/2 for 2 mana, 1 and a black. And it says when it enters the battlefield, Phyrexians you control gain menace until end of turn. Other Phyrexians get +1/+1, and for 3 and a black, you can sacrifice an artifact or creature and return this from the graveyard to the battlefield. Activate only as a sorcery. I mentioned this card because we're so close. We're so close to seeing like Infect grab black as like another color, maybe, and it's already got white. Like white and Infect is like almost like definitely a thing now. But like there are so many possible black Infect cards that are like just on the edge of playable, and we need like 1 or 2 more good Infect cards. And all Infect creatures are Phyrexian for the most part. And getting like a Lord for your guys is something that like it's just there. I don't think it's there yet, but it's something we should keep an eye on.
Yeah, you know what it needs? It needs Infect or Toxic.
It does need Infect or Toxic.
There's just like that deck is way too tight, right? Like there's no way
I wouldn't add black just for this card, but I always like whenever there's something that like 2 years from now we might be looking at this card being like this is the card that like started that trend, and now people are playing black black in their Infect deck. So I think that it's worth talking.
There's something to be said that first off, let me apologize that I always sound negative on these spoilers, but I think like once you reach back into Legacy and Vintage, most of the aggro decks, like if you were to think of like what does an aggro deck actually look like, you either need something that is objectively heinously broken, look at Initiative, or an aggro deck is indistinguishable from combo. Because the format is so fast that just playing a creatures and attacking without something that is an inherent design mistake, a la Initiative, or you can't really tell the difference between it being an aggro deck or a combo deck. Like look at Hogak.
Well, look at Merfolk with its paradigm shift situation.
It's like that's the thing. Like Merfolk, as you know it as an aggro deck, doesn't exist. If you see
Yeah.
it, it's tier 6 at your FNM, right? Same with any other like just straight aggro deck. Like I want to be creatures and I want to be turning them sideways. If it doesn't have an inherent combo finish that can kill them in the first 2 or 3 turns, or does something that is like prison-y broken, and the only real example that I can think of right now is Initiative. But outside of that, a straight up like zoo-ish type lordish aggro deck can't exist in the format where everything kills you well before you would ever get to close the door. And that's so like, and you've seen that like Merfolk is a good example of something that has like succumbed to this really steeply, where like over time, but they used to be an aggro deck, right? That was Aether Vial and Wasteland with Dazes, and then they were like, well, we have to become a Chalice deck because we have to prison our opponents in order to attack them, to save enough time to attack them. And then they moved over and became Paradigm Shift Thassa's Oracle because they're like, well, we have to become a combo deck because we're too slow as an aggro deck.
Yeah,
and
it's wild how
you can see that trend.
It's wild how it went from being like basically like Delver deck style. Like I used to play it with Dazes and like standstills and stuff. You try and like Wasteland daze your opponent out of the game. Then it moved to Chalice, and now it's like a combo deck.
It went from tempo to aggro prison to combo.
Yeah,
like that's the trajectory.
It's wild. It's wild that like the changes that deck has made over the years. I mean, the tools are the same in that deck. The like main like 8 to 10 Merfolk that you choose are basically the same. It's just 4 guys that give all the guys +1/+1 and make it so that fair blue decks lose to them, you know.
But even when it got Hexcatcher, right? Like the best lore that turns everything into a Curse Catcher, which should theoretically make you stronger against combo decks, because now you have as many you have 8 Curse Catchers like initially, and as many as you want. Plus they got another pseudo Wasteland effect in Tideshaper that also hoses like Urza Saga and such, and it's just not even close. It's just not even remotely close. And like I think that's representative if you were to look at any combo deck and how to actually make them worthwhile in the format nowadays with how fast it is. Like the trajectory that Merfolk has gone is pretty representative of like how much like more power creep the format has gotten. But that's been vintage for a long time, right? Like if you look at vintage aggro decks, they're like bizarre decks, in which case they're indistinguishable from combo, right? Because you're like, I'm going to be on the play. I'm a graveyard-esque based thing, and I'm going to put you on a 2-turn clock before you take a game action. Go.
Okay, so let's talk about Guardian of Girapor. That is a 3-mana 3/3 flyer for 2 and a white, and it is a angel. And it says, when this enters the battlefield, exile up to 1 other target creature artifact you control, return to the battlefield under the owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. This is just another Flicker Wisp, and I only mention it because it's, you know, Death and Taxes exists, and maybe they want a guy with a 3-butt instead of a 1-butt.
Dude, and it's a single pip.
And it is a single pip. Yeah.
Like
so that gets
single
so
matters.
in situations where you're playing Wasteland, Urza Saga, and Port, this is a card you could actually put into play instead of just flashing it in off of a vial.
Also, like a 3/3, like a 3-butt is a lot bigger than a 1-butt. The trade-off is that this only flickers artifacts or creatures, not anything. So, like, I know oftentimes, what you call it, a Flicker Wisp would like flicker a land, or you know, you could like flicker your own land to like reset it, so you'd be able to hold up mana. So it's not necessarily as versatile, but it's a lot easier on the mana, and it having a 3-butt is a pretty big deal. I mean, I think this is like, I don't know if they're gonna, if D&T would ever want this, because it doesn't, a 3-butt instead of a 2-butt for Recruiter is a big deal, right? And if you're not looking for your 5th Flicker Wisp, but then you're probably not moving into this. But it's close. It feels pretty good. Like if one of us picked this as like the likeliest to see play, I wouldn't have been shocked.
I think after finding out about the sorcery thing, I think this next card is the card that I would think would see play. And that is Hoarding Broodlord. That is a 8-mana 7/6 dragon with Convoke and Flying, and it says, when Hoarding Broodlord enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a card. exile it face down, then shuffle. For as long as that card remains exiled, you can play it. Spells you cast from exile have Convoke. So, do you know where I'm seeing this?
Where are you seeing this, Zach?
I'm seeing this in Reanimator. So you reanimate this guy, you go and get a reanimate, and then you cast reanimate again on another creature.
Oh, that's interesting.
Using the Broodlord as your black mana.
That's interesting. That's
right?
actually really interesting, Zach.
If you have like two creatures.
Zach, you hold on 1 second. You shut your mouth for a second. Zach, that's really interesting, Zach. I'm intrigued, Zach. I'm intrigued. You've intrigued me.
Well, thank you.
Consider me intrigued.
Yeah. So this is I see this as like one of, if you're in a situation where you want this and Grizzlebrand or something like that, you can entomb for this as like a toolbox card and be like, boom, boom, I got this. I got Atraxa in play as well. And like now you have two big dudes and your opponent has to deal with two big dudes. The only deck that I know that can deal with two big dudes like that is Miracles. And like, Phil, no one plays Miracles anymore.
You're making me now think of, the thing is, like, if you are reanimating, you're probably winning the game, right?
Sure.
Like, if you've cast reanimate, you've probably already won. But I'm not opposed to the idea now that you're talking about how the Hoarding Broodlord as its own mana, that you could, like, if this somehow gets into play, you could also just use it to cast a Thoughtseize right away to like ensure that you untap or stop your opponent from comboing out. That's also pretty interesting. Man, I really wish Grizzlebrand was banned so like that we could have these interesting conversations.
I think that this
card is so cool. Like, you're right.
We said that we said that about Atraxa, and Atraxa's seeing almost as much play as Grizzlebrand nowadays.
It's seeing play, but it's still like it's seeing play in addition to Grizzlebrand. It's not taking Grizzlebrand's spot.
Yeah.
It's like,
but I think that's why it's important that we look at these big creatures occasionally and be like, this and yeah, Grizzlebrand exists, but this, because occasionally, like, something eventually is going to be better than Grizzlebrand. We got very close. I don't think Hoarding Broodlord is better than Grizzlebrand. I wouldn't put 4 of them in my deck. But a 7/6 flyer is nothing to scoff at, and the fact that it, like, you're never going to convoke this out in the deck that you're playing it in, obviously, but being able to use it as its own black mana, or if you do happen to have out another creature and be like, okay, cool, I'm gonna get animate dead, and so I don't lose the life, and we'll boop boop, do that. I just think that it's an interesting space for you to be in that deck, and I think that you said, the Thoughtseize situation, that's the utility that this card offers is pretty interesting.
You're making me think now, like, now that I'm intrigued by this card, I think like Grizzlebrand is just going to push it out, but I'm intrigued by it, and I'm more intrigued now to think of spells you cast from exile have Convoke. If there's any other cards that just like incidentally exile that you would then be able to turbo combo, I'm thinking stuff like Food Chain, but I don't know enough Food Chain to know that something like this would ever be relevant. But it's pretty. I wasn't looking at this card at all, and now that you've mentioned it, now I'm like interested in exploring it. Yeah, I'm intrigued.
All right, I just want to bring up this card because it makes me sad. Ichor Shade is a 3-mana Phyrexian Shade. 2/3, and it says, the beginning of your instep, an artifact or creature was put into the graveyard from the battlefield this turn, put a +1/+1 on Ichor Shade. Phil, do you know why I'm talking about this card? Why I'm sad?
Pray
about
tell
this
Zach,
card?
why are you sad?
Because it's not Ishin Shade. It could have, like, I thought Ishin Shade was going to be in the set, dude. I was like, this is it. This is our chance. We're coming back around again. But no, the corrupted Sarah Paladin remains just a shade in Ogrotha, and we don't get to hear anything about him. Literally the only reason why I want to talk about that card, though.
Remains MIA. I mean, at least there is the saving grace for this card in that the artwork is extremely metal.
It's pretty rad.
It's pretty metal.
Look at him holding that skull.
He's straight up holding his own face. Yeah, that's pretty wild.
All right. So let's talk about Rampaging Raptor. Rampaging Raptor is a 4/4 for 4 that has trample and haste, and for 2 and a red, it gains +2/+0 Whenever it deals combat damage to an opponent, it deals that much damage to target planeswalker. It deals that much damage to target planeswalker that player controls or battle that player controls or protects. Sorry. So this is one of those cards that I like. It's just like Doomscar Warrior. I mention it because this could be a card that you throw into you throw in as your questing beast for.
Would you like questing beast at home? Also, this card. Like every time they make a questing beast where they're just like, hey, would you like to ever make a decision? How about instead the card does everything, so you never actually have to choose anything. You just do one thing and it does it all for you. I hate cards like this.
Yeah,
it's just so dumb. Like they're just so brain dead cards.
This is a 4-mana card that could slot into a red prison deck if Urabrask didn't exist.
Even if Rampaging Raptor, like let's say Rampaging Raptor is better because it's in red instead of green, so it's better than Questing Beast. Like even if that's the case, this card, this design, all of like any designer who's like, you know what, let's just remove any decision. Like the most interesting thing about any part of the game is when you are put to a choice and then you have to choose, and then either you are rewarded or punished for that choice. That's the most interesting part of any game that you play in Magic. And these types of cards just remove all of the. I hate it, dude. I hate it so much. It tilts me so much that they would look at this and go, this is fun. You never have to think.
Okay. Moving on. Guys, have we said the F word enough? Someone in the comment section let us know. By we, I mean Phil. I try not to say the F word here. I'll
label this one as explicit. Like
I say enough in real life.
Raptor. like all the designers that are designing these questing beast type cards can do better.
Right. So parental advisory on this episode. So Urabrask exists, like I was saying. And Urabrask is a 4-mana 4/4 for 4. With first strike. And whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, it deals 1 damage to target opponent. And you add 1, and then you can exile it.
You had red. You had red.
What's that?
You had red.
What did I say? Colorless?
You said add 1.
Add 1 red. Add 1 red. Sorry. Exile it for 1 red if you have cast 3 or more sorceries or instants this turn. When it flips, it becomes the Great Work. The Great Work deals 3 damage to target opponent and each creature they control.
It's a saga, so that's,
right.
Yeah.
It's a saga. That's on 1. On 2, it creates 3 treasure tokens, and on 3, at the end of turn. Until the end of turn, you can cast instant or sorcery cards from your graveyard. If a spell would be put in the graveyard this way, exile it, flip it over. And the thing is once you do that, you flip it over, you pay 1 red, and you flip it right back over again. So you can keep like chaining this. That's my only thought with this card is like it's interesting because it's different. I don't see this like going into Delver or anything like that. Phil,
this card is very good though. I think this card is good. I think, I mean, 4-mana 4/4 is steep, but it saying whenever you cast an instant and sorcery is already very reminiscent of Burgi.
Yep.
Which does see play in one deck. But the Burgi having the backside of being a card advantage or card draw engine as the horn for 5 mana. This one for 4 mana, after you have cast your 3 spells, also just does something similar when you can flip it. Wrathing the table is something that kind of deck does not have access to.
Yeah.
Right. Unless you are grape shotting them. So the fact that this one is a win condition on its own, so you wouldn't even need necessarily grape shot. You could just storm out. You wouldn't necessarily need the storm payoff card because it by itself, it just face up by itself is the grape shot. Right. 1 for every many you have, and you don't have to flip it. Like you have the option after you cast 3 instants of sorceries to pay red to flip it, and you can do that, and that's relevant if you need a wrath to dome them, or if you just want 1 red mana and bolt them because it deals
do that 3 damage after you've gone off, as it were, right?
To target opponent and each creature they control, right? And then if you're flipping it, if you're getting the game where you're grinding and you flipped it, like the backside, just the same as the backside with any of the Praetors. I know we talked about Elishnorn last time about being possible. This one is likelier because the mana gate is lower. So
much lower,
wrathing your opponent's side of the table, potentially, obviously really powerful. Black Lotus on number 2 is obviously really powerful. And then Pass in Flames on 3 is obviously very powerful. So all of the text on this card is very powerful shit. And First Strike is always a sleeper French vanilla ability in the format. Like if you have first strike on a creature, especially as a 4/4, it's very unlikely to be dying in combat. Like, you are probably just going to be getting in. Like, there isn't anything that is bigger than this outside of an Uro. And if we're at that point in the game, you probably have the mana to flip this and do different things anyway. So this is also one of those things, like, you can't flip it at instant speed. Reminder, you can only activate this at sorcery speed, so you can't like protect your Urabast, but it does a lot of shit that's really powerful. Like, all of the text on it is very powerful. So if it shows up, I think, like, of the Praetors, this is the most powerful one for Legacy, at least.
All right, we've got Veteran Thrill Seeker. Phil, how do you feel about playing Phyrexian Dreadnought again, man?
You want to play this card? Sacrifice it?
Because this card is you got to try and live the dream here. For 3 mana, you get a 1/1 with backup 2, so it could be a 3/3 that reads: sacrifice this creature. It deals damage equal to its power to a target. So you could throw a 14/14 at your opponent for 2 mana.
Well, backup 2 is when this creature enters the battlefield, not when the Dreadnought enters the battlefield. So
no. So you have to just like Lazav knot it.
You would have to do a lot of hoops.
Yeah, there's a lot of hoops on this one. So all right, we'll move on then. We've got Atrax's Fall. Atrax's Fall says destroy target artifact, battle, enchantment, or creature with flying. This looks like a sideboard card that might actually be able to see play if any battles like make it. And we're going to talk about battles soon, and I think some of them could see play. But if we get a deck that like leverages battles well, this could be a sideboard card that we see play.
I think that like all of the battles that would see play are just abrupt decayable. So I don't think that the Atraxa. I think Atraxa's downfall in this case really is the fact that it's a sorcery.
Yeah.
Like prismatic ending exists, and prismatic ending is more efficient at a sorcery speed.
Yeah.
Like, yes, this can hit a creature with flying, but the only thing that this would have a window to like kill with flying that's relevant is maybe a Murktide, right? But you're committing most of your turn to doing that. Like, anything else with flying that would want to hit at mana parity or better, it's just never actually going to have the opportunity. Like, it can't destroy Merit Lage. Grizzlebrand will already have killed you.
Yeah.
If you're trading,
Grizzlebrand will have ways to protect itself as well. Probably.
If you're playing this against the Delver creatures, you're trading down at sorcery speed. Like, it's just the way that it lines up with everything in the format is too slow.
Lithomancer's Barrage. This spell can't be countered. Lithomancer's Barrage. Lithomatic. You know, because I don't want to screw up a made-up word.
Lithomantic. Looks like you did.
Oh no!
Oh no! Oh no!
Lithomantic. How I was telling my wife last night when we were having a nice little moment on the couch how Lithomantic the movie we were watching was.
So Lithomantic.
Use it in a sentence, right?
So Lithomantic.
So anyhow, this spell can't be countered. It deals 1 damage to target creature or planeswalker. It deals 5 damage. Instead, if that target is white or blue, I mentioned this for 2 reasons. 1, why couldn't they just make this like 7 damage so that like it could hit a Murktide most of the time? 2, how about like it could take out Teferi, it could take out Narset. It does have some utility. I don't think this card will see play because like the other side of it is kind of but like if they could have just like upped this just a little bit so it could kill a Murktide Regent, which I think that would be the only reason to like play a card like this.
Here's the only space where I can see this ever seeing play, because Pyroblast exists, right?
Yeah.
The only spot that I can think where the clause of a creature being white being relevant and this spell not being able to be countered is this can kill a Seasoned Dungeoneer through a Chalice.
Okay. I like that.
That's the one pigeonholed, like, very narrow thing that if you are a red deck that struggles with Chalice and needs to be able to remove a Seasoned Dungeoneer, this for still 1 mana, because it can't be countered, you could just kill a Seasoned Dungeoneer right through a Chalice. That's it. That's the only position that I can think of, and maybe that position is good enough. Like, that might just be a spot that's good enough. So,
all right, Phil, we're gonna do lightning round because I know you have to leave soon. So, lightning round rules are: do you think good enough or good enough or not? I've got some battles here. We're gonna go through them real fast. We have the Invasion of Asgoul. It is a 2 mana, 4 loyalty Siege. And when it enters the battlefield, target player sacrifices a creature or planeswalker and loses 1 life. And then it flips to a 2/1 with Menace. At the beginning of your end step, put a +1/+1 counter on Ashen Reaper, which is what this is called, if a permanent was put into the graveyard from the battlefield this turn. Is Death Rattle +1/+1 2-mana guy good enough?
No.
No. Okay, moving on. We have the Invasion of Ergomon. This is a 2-mana 5 loyalty invasion that says when it enters the battlefield, create a treasure token. Then you can discard a card from your hand. If you do, draw a card, and it becomes a 3/4 trampler that when it enters the battlefield, you can discard a card. If you do, search your library for a land or a battle, reveal it, and put it into your hand, then shuffle.
This is way closer. This is
closer, right? Because of that like draw. It almost has like a thrill of possibility kind of situation going on.
So if you cast it, the fact that it gives you a treasure back means that it effectively only costs 1 mana, so you can theoretically double spell in a turn. The other side is that it being able to loot, we've seen how powerful shit like that is in stuff like, what's the Kiki Jiki enchantment, Fable of the Mirror Breaker. We've seen how just being able to like rummage, maybe set up something that you want in your yard anyway is really powerful. But the other side of it is that when this flips, it lets you draw a card and discard a card. If you then loot again, you can just pick up another copy of itself. And so you can start chaining copies, and that like
that seems like
I think like the big thing on battles that is like really hard to evaluate is you do have to deal 5 damage in order for it to flip, and then once you do, you get to like, you know, you in this case you get a tutor, which is really powerful. Like maybe there's something there, but like I don't think any of the battles are really good enough, to be honest.
It doesn't say for a basic land either. It says for a land. So like
this is the closest one because it does a bunch of inherently powerful things that like are fine at 2 mana.
I'm gonna mention I've never heard of Ergomon or Asgoul before. I don't know anything about those places.
I think the other thing is like red and green, you're in colors where you're gonna need to attack, right?
Yeah.
You're not in the color, you're not dark ritualing, you know, like you're likely in a position where you were set up to try and attack these battles down, which is why it feels better to me.
Invasion of Gabakan.
Wow.
That's like saying Gabakan. That is a 2-mana, 3 loyalty, and it says when it enters the battlefield, look at target player's hand, and you may exile a non-land card, and then it costs 2 more if he wants to recast it. And then we can flip it, and the flip says at the beginning of your end step, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature that attacked this turn. Sacrifice this. All of your creatures gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn.
I mean, we've seen how powerful PVDDR is, and that's the first ability is his ability for 1 cheaper, except instead of getting a 3/1 flyer that's beating them down, you're just getting a battle that is then pumping your team on the backside. Is it good enough? Probably not. You're probably not going to be spending your time doing this, but in a way it is a cheap white duress. I've been high on Curse of Silence recently, and it's, you know, similar in that vein. I think like because the format is so fast, these cards that like strip a card and tax it steeply, and 2 mana is steep. The cards that tax in a world where games end so much faster than they ever did before, that becomes effectively duress. Like a lot of the times, PVDDR is just a 3/1 flyer that thought seizes you,
or it's a time walk. You know, like that, and that's good enough too. A lot of times, you know, like casting time walk, in the form of stopping your opponent's next play, you know, is often good enough.
The other side is like 3 loyalty or 3 defense or whatever the battles have is is pretty much the lowest that any battle has across the board. So it's like this card is it seems like this card is pushed on mana and defense to be competitive, constructed playable. So the effects are good. I just don't know if anybody's going to want to waste their time on it. I don't think it's going to make it, but I wouldn't be shocked if these are the 2 battles that people test.
The battle, the Invasion of Ixalan is a 2-mana, that's 1 and a green, 4 loyalty battle, and when it enters the battlefield, look at the top of your library, reveal a permanent from among. Look at the. God damn it! I'm sorry, everybody. It's sideways.
Reveal a permanent card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. It's a 2-mana cantrip that flips into a 4/3 trampler.
It's the top 5 cards. That's what I was trying to figure out. I missed it.
It's not good enough.
No, this is
not
not
good
good enough.
It's not good enough.
All right, fair enough. Invasion of Kaladesh is a 4 loyalty, for 2 mana. And when it enters the battlefield, you get a 1/1 colorless Thopter token. And when it flips, you get a flying X4 that is a vehicle. And its power is equal to the number of artifacts you control. This is a card that I looked at and I thought, maybe.
No, not a chance. No way.
No.
2 mana.
You don't have
2
a
mana for your
blue-red
1/1
artifacts
flyer?
deck?
Get out of here. 2 mana for your 1/1 flyer that then you need to invest 4 attacking power to flip it into a vehicle that may or may not do anything. Come on.
All right. Invasion of Karsus is a 4 mana with 4 loyalty that says when it enters the battlefield, it deals 3 damage to each creature and each planeswalker. When it flips, it is a 4/4 with ward, pay 2 life. Whenever you cast a spell, it deals 2 damage to each opponent.
4 mana is just so pricey for a
So
Brotherhood
pricey.
end.
Yeah.
When you have Brotherhood end, like, and then even if you do, you still have to, like, it's 4 mana, you get a Brotherhood end that wraths creaters, and then
Probably rash
like,
your
you know,
board
small
if you're
creatures.
attacking. Like,
And
which
then
is upsetting.
like unless you're playing thick, I think this just doesn't line up. I don't think it's gonna line up.
It's a bummer because the other side is like pretty good.
The other side's a banger, but like you're just never gonna get there.
All right, Invasion of Mercadia. This is 2 mana for a foil loyalty, and it says when it enters the battlefield, you may discard a card. If you do, draw 2 cards. So we already like that part for 2 mana, right?
We do.
When it flips, you get a 3/3 Spell Shaper that is a goblin that will create a 2/1/1 blue-red elemental creature tokens, and it pumps your whole team, gives them haste.
You know, rare first time I'm pulling this one out, but Fable of the Mirror Breaker exists.
It's true. I do like this is a lesson on the front side is almost worth playing by itself, and that's kind of where I'm at with that. Like, flipping it, great, but are you really spending 3 mana to like get 4 damage onto the board? Probably not. Because you've already jumped through so many hoops to just get to the point where now you can get a payoff by paying another like 3 mana and tapping this thing. Invasion of New Capenna is 2 mana for a 4 loyalty siege, and when it enters the battlefield, a sacrifice an artifact or creature. When you do, exile a artifact or creature an opponent controls, and when you flip it, it becomes a artifact equipment. And whenever the equipped creature attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on each other creature you control that shares a creature type with it. It costs 1 to equip. I don't know that like there's any black and white situation where you want this. It's a 2 mana thing, so I put it in there. But like,
no.
I agree.
There's no deck that rewards you for going wide in this format in a meaningful way.
Yeah.
That like you can use for synergy. Like if you have synergy in your deck, you're comboing.
Yeah. All right, the final one, Friction, Invasion of Ferulia. This is a 4 mana for 1 green and 1 blue. When it enters the battlefield,
4 defense, 4 defense, not 4 mana.
Defense. Sorry, I meant defense.
It's a 2 mana battle.
Yeah, 2 mana battle. When it enters the battlefield, scry 3, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land or a double face card, you draw a card. And then you get a 4/4 trample ward 2. Other transformed permanents you control or have trample and ward 2. So you can give all of your battles on the board ward 2 so that you can't target them. And trample, so they have trample.
It's a bad cantrip, and I feel like if you're in the cantrippy decks, you're not going to be spending your time attacking.
Yeah,
so that's what I mean. Like when I was saying like
the
red green one, you're situated in a position where you kind of are compelled to attack. That's like likely what your deck does.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're in these cantrippy style decks, you're not meaningfully attacking this down. You're playing a Minsc and Boo or you're playing Uro, and like at that point you have better cantrips to be playing, and you're not going to be wasting your time trying to flip this into a 4/4.
Yeah, I think I say this about all of these invasions, all the battles, is that they're only good if the front side does something that you wouldn't mind it just sitting on the board and not doing anything else. And right. if you do decide, like, if the game like having the option of like, oh, maybe a thing happens if my opponent ostensibly gains 4 life, is just gravy at that point. But if that's not a thing for you, like if you're not feeling like the front side's worth playing, probably isn't worth playing at all.
Yeah, I think like that's how battles work until we're proven otherwise.
Yeah.
I think that the two most likely are the invasion of Ergomon and the invasion of Gobakan. I think are the two reasonable ones that like are you might see as like people experimenting with, because they do have relevant effects and they're going to be in colors that want to otherwise attack them down. But beyond that, I think battles are not going to be a mechanic that we see in Legacy.
Yeah. Well, I think that kind of does it for us for the most part this week. Remember, please comment below, like the video if you've gotten some value out of this, if you found anything interesting here that
if you hate questing beasts.
Yeah, if you need questing beasts, please hit us up in the Discord. We're there constantly talking to everybody and doing all that. Check out our shorts. They exist. They're just like fun moments. You get like 1 minute with me a day just rambling about nonsense. And that's kind of it for us today. Phil, you're probably out next week. We might have you in. We'll see what happens. We'll see how schedules line up. If not, it'll be me and somebody. We'll catch you guys all next week. Bye.